All right, well, I'm in Sydney, Australia today, so I'm very glad to be talking to someone about hydrogen, which is something that I've been trying to learn a lot about in the last week. So Justin Pitts has kindly flown in from Perth in Sydney to Sydney now. And thank you for coming on the Rental Journey podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Mark. It's awesome to meet you, and great timing that I was in Sydney and we could get together and have this conversation.
So I actually saw Blue Diamond Machinery a while ago online, and I've seen you at a few events, but you seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, like, I guess before we get into where you are at with Blue Diamond Machinery, like, how did you personally first get involved in the equipment rental industry?
Yeah, I guess taking a step back in terms of where Blue Diamond originated from, I guess would make sense. So we're 10 years old today, almost to the day. So myself, my brother Brad, and Chris, 3 partners, 3 directors. We started the business from a standing start 10 years ago. So prior to that, Brad and myself were working in our family business that my dad and his brother had started back in '77, and both of us had worked there as kids, sort of growing up through school holidays, that kind of thing. And we both, went to uni and had various stops along the way and had other experiences, travelled overseas and so forth. But our family business was always part of our career and I guess part of our life when we were growing up. So at some point, Dad got approached to buy the business, or Dad and his brother Ken got approached to buy the business. So, and that was a very interesting period. We ultimately sold out to like a private equity group, and then there was a bit of a roll up of different companies, and eventually it became from what was quite a successful, well-known Western Australian business, it became a national business. I stayed on there as a general manager for 5 years. I worked in Melbourne for a couple of years. And so from there, it was Brad had moved on to a different career path. I stayed at the family company, what was the family company.
What was the name, sorry?
Total Eden was the name of the company, and it's since been resold again. So it's now actually called Nutrien, which is a huge Canadian conglomerate, but it's still quite a well-known brand in Western Australia. So they sold the company, stayed on for 5 years. Brad and myself were both probably not overly excited about staying in the corporate roles that we had at the time. Whilst I was learning a lot, working in a corporate environment, having come from a family business, and Brad had gone into sort of financial services broking, we both really wanted to get back into having just a private business that we could drive and grow. So we looked at buying different businesses. Like, we didn't have a lot of capital available, but we'd spoken to the bank about potentially borrowing some money to buy a business. We spoke to business brokers. We were looking at different ways of just having our own business. Ultimately, spent probably a year doing that, or maybe even longer. We decided to start a business on our own. I guess started from scratch. We didn't want to go back into family's industry, which was the irrigation and pumping industry. One, just for ethical reasons, like didn't want to be seen to be leveraging off, I guess the work that, Dad had sold the business, so we didn't want to be going out there and competing with our old friends and colleagues and all that sort of stuff, which plenty of people do. But also, we'd been in that industry our whole life, and we're probably a little bit sick of it, to be honest. So we were looking for something new. So we didn't have any direct history within the equipment industry as such. Going back to that point, we literally just canvassing ideas, throwing around ideas. Just so happens that my father-in-law sold his business around the same time as my dad, and he had a very different to what we are now, but a very successful import distribution business. But he said a lot of the key products that moved in that business were generators, compressors, and things like that. So we didn't. I understood generators. We used them a lot in the irrigation industry. I understood what they were. Air compressors, I probably didn't have a lot of understanding about. I have a much better understanding now. But he was able to give us some insight into an industry we didn't know about. So from there, we started researching the industry, researching different suppliers, looking at different companies in the industry and what they're doing, how they're presenting themselves, just trying to get a head around it, I guess. It seemed to make sense to us. We're based in Perth. We're a national company now, but at that point, we're obviously looking for something that's going to work in WA. WA is effectively mining and agriculture, the two key markets. So it made sense to go after a product range that would suit the mining and agricultural markets. So it was as simple as Brad and I come from a sales marketing background. We realized very quickly we don't know anything about supporting the machines, fixing the machines, even how to turn the things on at that stage. So we brought in a third partner, Chris, who's one of our school friends. So Chris had been working in mining for 20 years at that point, and is a qualified trade mechanical fitter. So from there it was the three of us. We went to China, we went to Singapore, we found some suppliers, and literally imported 3 containers of stock. We set up a small yard in Welshpool, which was pretty humble. It was 200 square meters. We bought 1 truck, had a forklift, ordered the containers, set up the website, put it out in the paper, and just waited for the phone to ring. And luckily it did. And we literally sold all that kit within a month or something, and thought, shit, now we've got no stock. And obviously redeployed that to capital, bought more stock. And so at that point we were probably more looking at it as a broad industrial rather than anything specific or anything. We had no real clear strategy as to where we were going, other than we wanted to have a broad product range which covered both mining, agriculture, and we wanted a counter-cyclical kind of product range, which, if we started in 2012, mining was just crashing. So it had gone from absolute boom times to we were literally starting the business as mining services companies are going broke left, right, and center. There's an excess of equipment in the market. So we started with a very broad product base, but as we've evolved, the power generation side of things really, I guess, took off for us. And so from starting off quite broad, we've taken, I guess, particularly over the last 5 years, we've embraced the power generation side and really focused in on that. And I guess that's what's led us to where we are now, which is 70% of our business is power generation, and the only products we sell, whilst we still have some legacy products that we keep that are sort of unrelated, they are related in a way because they're the same customers. So it might be some of the smaller product ranges that we still sell, but ultimately it's power, lighting, and compressors. So how we got in the rental industry, we're obviously a supplier to the rental industry. We don't look to go out and be a rental company. Probably the catalyst for that really was when we got the agency for Denyo. So Denyo are a very well-known brand in the industry. They're Japanese built, very strong reputation in mining and construction. So I think we really wanted to elevate, because at that point we did have some quality products, but we didn't have a really strong brand to leverage off. It was just really the work we'd done, our own contacts, our own marketing that had got us to that sort of 5-year point, which was quite, wasn't an easy journey to there, and it certainly wasn't easy to convince Denyo to give us distribution when we're a relatively young company. But getting Denyo, I guess there was always an existing market for it, there was existing customers for it, customers knew it. So that gave us an opportunity, or more of an opportunity, to start selling some real volume into the rental industry. So now that's created a lot of strong relationships with obviously the big rental companies like Kennards and Coates and Onsite and these types of guys. Onsite were already a big customer of Denyo and still are. So that's probably been the main catalyst to get us involved in the rental industry and I guess expand that presence further. So last 3 bar, I think 1, we've done 3 or 4 of the Hire 22 events now and really focusing in that as a core market for us.
Yeah. And so fast forward to today, come up to the 10 years, like what's the dynamic of the business now in terms of size?
Yep. So 10 years later, still the three of us. So Brad, Chris, and myself both actively work in the business. The business has obviously grown. We've got over 60 staff. We've moved to Perth. This is the third time we've moved it only a couple of years ago, and hopefully that's where we're staying. So it's a much bigger facility in Perth. It's 10,000 square meters with a pretty significant workshop. We've got a lot of technicians, electricians, and so forth to not only up-spec the equipment to the customer's requirements, but also support in the field as well. So Perth's still our main base, no doubt about that. But our Melbourne branch is very strong. It's not on the same scale, but it's like a mini version of Perth in the sense that it's got sales, technicians, support, stock. Same in Brisbane. We've got the operation there. So we've got the 60 staff, 3 branches. I guess you'd say, national presence now. And I guess from your perspective, that's what you're seeing is us evolve into a national company. Within the next month, we'll have our Sydney branch open, and that's the last box tick in terms of that side of it, being a truly national company.
So growing that business in 10 years and coming in really fresh to the industry, there would have been a lot of challenges about learning about what customers actually want, what products they need, how to actually run the business from maintaining the equipment, all that sort of stuff that goes along with it. So why do you think Blue Diamond Machinery was successful in the early days and where you got it to today?
I think it's really hard to start a business from scratch, and because you don't have any customers, you don't have anything, you have to go and deploy capital that you may or not get back. There's a lot of pressure. You've obviously given up your job, but ultimately we all just turned up every day and kept going. And I think that really is the key. The fact that it's our business, it's up to us to make it work. So Brad, literally day one, it's Brad and myself on the phones. Chris is out the back fixing any stuff that comes in or whatever. So, but turning up every day and just keep going through that period. But I think just getting through those first few years in particular to a point where we could at least start earning some money out of the business, because at that point we're all just drawing down on savings and debt and all the rest of it just to keep our lives ticking along. So the key reason for success, I think ultimately in the early stages, was just the commitment to make it work. It had to work. We had no plan B.
Yeah.
So we're all in. And I think picking the right industry, like I think having that insight into an industry we knew nothing about, to be honest, through my father-in-law was important, because it was what we were looking for. We wanted something that was exposed to, at that point, we didn't really know the rental industry would become a key customer of ours, and we wouldn't even have attempted in our first 5 years to really even try and sell to the rental industry, because we were still learning, and we certainly didn't want to go out there and go to Coates Hire and say, hey, come and buy our generators we've just brought in from China, and we're trying to work out the whole industry ourselves. But just getting to that point where we fully understood the market, fully understood the product ranges, got some really good agencies, and not just Denyo, but also their lighting towers and air compressors and so forth. From that 5-year point has just enabled us, has given us a platform to move into like more of a national kind of role. But I think also no one knows how partnerships are going to work. That's really tricky, particularly with your brother. At times, we've obviously all had our ups and downs where where everyone's under pressure. But I think obviously we chose a team that worked. It's not perfect, but it's worked. So we've all managed to stay together, stay in there, and get the business to a point now where it is exciting to be there. It is fun, whereas it's probably hard to say the same about the first few years.
Is there a specific challenge that you can remember that you can sort of think back and go, that period was tough? Is there a moment?
Yeah. I think, cash flow is hard for every business, and the industry we're in is highly cash intensive. And I think one of the reasons we have been successful is we have always ordered a lot of stock, and we've always had stock available. So there's been periods where, we're literally saying to the bank, guys, make the payment, and you just string it out for a month. And Westpac have been really supportive in that sense in the early days. I guess that tension brings, some conflict and some, not necessarily amongst the partnership, but it brings tension. And so I wouldn't say there's one specific moment. There's probably been dozens of them. But yeah, mainly in those first few years, you've obviously got all the compliance stuff you're trying to understand with the products. Getting to the point where we start employing people was then a challenge, because then we're, being able to attract people when you're that small, and
selling a vision to them, really.
Yeah, you're not exactly an employer of choice at that point. What's our vision at that point? It's just to stay in business. So we don't really have a lot of shiny prospectus or brochures that we could show. So yeah, really challenging in the early days. One particular moment, no, but yeah, definitely that first 5 year period. We moved into another building over that period, which was really good. That sort of felt like we were stepping up, and it just so happened. I mean, sometimes you need a little bit of fate, you need a little bit of luck. It happened to be across the road from who turned out to be one of our biggest customers at the time, and is still a really good customer of ours, Linkforce Engineering. They're a mining services business in Western Australia, and some of the guys there were just like, they literally came in, walked in and said, "Blue Diamond, the hell do you guys do?" And we're like, well, we're not too sure actually, but we literally come around and show them the equipment, the generators. So from there they became a customer, literally day one, and I guess gave us more of an insight into mining and what they want and the specifications and that kind of thing. So there was a little bit of luck in that move, and that was really good, and they're still good friends and good customers to this day. But yeah, we outgrew that within probably a couple of years. And then, 3 years ago, so at that stage we had stock like literally parked at 5 different locations and very inefficient. The warehouse looked horrible. It wasn't, we probably under-resourced it because we're always mindful of going broke and having too many staff. So we were under-resourced. So the place didn't present how we wanted it to. We never put the money into signage and branding. Although we spent a lot on our website, we didn't spend a lot of money on the way our operation looked and felt, because we just didn't have it basically. So it was not. So whilst we were moving forward, it did look like a bit of a rabble at times, and so we finally got the capacity to move, and we found a much better location, and now I finally feel like we've got it to a point where I'm proud that if say like a Rio Tinto or a BHP or a Canard Tire walks through the door, I don't have to tell the guys and give them 2 weeks notice to clean up. It's any day they can walk in, it looks good, feels good, and this is how we operate. So yeah, it's been definitely a progression, but ultimately now we're in a reasonably strong position.
So I want to touch on something a little bit more further, because I think you gave a little bit of a insight into what can make a business successful as well. You mentioned that mining company would come into your business and then they would tell you what they needed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people start businesses and they think that they already know everything.
Yeah.
And they go out there and they're pitching rather than listening.
Yeah.
If you didn't listen to what they said, they would go, just another company that just wants to throw generators at me or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Instead of saying, oh, no, this is the problem I have. These are the specs I need. This is why I need it.
Yeah.
And then not you pushing back saying, no, you don't have to do it. Do it like this. So is that like something that like is ingrained into like the culture?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it. I think because we didn't know the industry, we were really listening to anyone that would try and help us. And I mean, what we ended up doing with them at that point is not a core part of our business. We ended up procuring 10 40-foot containers to be made into worksite workshops. So we found a supplier in China. We went to China. We got all the designs done through an engineering company and sold them, a bunch of these containers for their work sites. But so at that point, we're just happy to do anything, and we're still happy to do stuff like that or customize anything for key customers. But ultimately, yes, because it with all any opportunity we got to speak to a really good rental customer or a really good mining customer, we would really try and pull out the information in terms of what they're buying, what sort of spec, and that today, we're still interested in what and still learning every day. It's going back to sort of like reasons for success as well. I think a lot of companies, once they get to a certain size, there's an instant response to try putting barriers up to customers to make you less accessible. And we run a very flat sales structure. So to this day, Brad and myself still sit in the showroom. Yes, we're not there every single day and don't serve every customer. We have obviously a team. Philosophy about the customer side is they ring, they don't get a messaging machine, they get through to someone then. So we don't run receptionists, we don't run recording, we don't take messages. I mean, yes, we miss calls, but that's not intentional. The idea is the phone rings, it gets answered, and it's answered by someone who knows about the products. So customer can ring up and, okay, it might be sales or support, but they get through to the person straight away. That's really important. So I think in those early days when customers were ringing up, it's literally just Brad and myself answering the phone for those first few years. And then we didn't trust anyone to answer the phone because we needed that sale. It was only when, to be honest, Mark answered the phone one day and sold something, and I said, shit, how did you sell that? He doesn't even know what it is. And he still doesn't know what half the stuff he sells, but he's just had a knack for selling. And I guess that was the first point with, okay, let's get some other people involved in the sales and let go of some of that responsibility. And so that, and then obviously as it goes, you bring more people in and they do the same, and he's able to teach them. And so now we're able to focus on more of the key accounts and not so much just the smaller customers that come in are just as important to us, but obviously we can't deal with everyone that walks through the door. But if someone walks in and has a complaint or some sort of issue, either Brad or myself are there to deal with it, and we're always available to our customers. So like anyone if you ring up some larger companies, for example, trying to get through to someone to actually get a pricing or to get a solution, I don't think, unless you're a big name customer yourself, you might find it quite hard to actually get through. So whereas I guess we found ourselves in a position where, yeah, we're not perfect, but we're available, we're there, we're hungry. And so people were giving us a chance. And probably at that point, we were probably a fair bit cheaper than everyone as well, because we were, trying to get ourselves into the market and all the rest of it. So
yeah, I think the challenge with that is trying to scale that. I think customers, they get addicted to that service.
That's right.
Like if I try and call Qantas to talk about getting a refund on my flight, I have to go through.
Yeah, good luck.
It's just a loophole after loophole.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of things there. One, it's letting go of the reins a little bit.
Yeah.
You can't control everything constantly.
Yeah.
You need to know that other people need to be able to brew their own success within the business.
Yeah.
And then trying to scale that to a point where you're at a national level. If you can take that type of service and put it to a national level, it's a bit of a game changer, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And that's 100%. That is a definite goal, but it's challenging. We've since had some HR challenges like everyone has over COVID. I feel like we've put some really good people in at a national level to focus on our operations and training. I think COVID taught us a lot because, we literally opened our Brisbane branch during the COVID period. So we had a branch operating with 6 staff, and we hadn't been there. And we had $2 million worth of stock in there, but we'd had one of our guys from Melbourne move across there, so there was taking some of that DNA over there and being able to start it, and he was a good, young, motivated guy. But I think what we didn't do, once the reins were open and we could travel again, we didn't get back on the horse fast enough. And so I think it's become very apparent that we need to spend far more time with our people. I obviously take responsibility for that potentially if we were there and were able to share the vision of where we're going better, and to really engage with them on a personal level, face to face. I think I started taking Teams meetings as real meetings, and they're not. So to your point, I think that's going to be a key part of it, is just maintaining that personal contact with all our staff, making sure that they're aware that's what we want. We want that personal service. We want to be available to our customers. We don't want to be hiding behind, big walls and public, receptionist type staff or whatever it is. We are the front line. So, so that's definitely something we're not going to change.
Yeah. Now, look, I want to talk about hydrogen for a bit. So, before we get into it, I remember I was in Adelaide and I was walking through the Hire 22 convention, and I was walking through everywhere, and I got sort of the back section and I turned left, and I just saw this huge white thing. I was like, is that a generator? Like that? Like, I have never seen a generator like it stands out with the white. Like I've never seen one like that before. And I walked over to it, and it was huge. Like it's bigger than anything I've ever sort of seen it at the trade show before. And I think we were talking before that it weighs.
That's five and a half ton.
Wow,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I saw that, and it caught my attention straight away.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I got to find out more about it. So I started doing a bit more research, and I was actually in that same time flying to the US, to Texas, to do a podcast around gas-powered generators.
Okay, yeah.
So I was doing a bit of study because it's very common in Texas. So, and I thought, I've got to come back and I want to learn about this hydrogen generator because I haven't seen anything on the market so far. Did a bit of research. So maybe before we get into what it is, like how do you, like, because hydrogen is a new market, basically. Like, how do you start getting into a new market?
Yeah. So it's quite interesting, and we've been going down this rabbit hole pretty aggressively for the past 12 months, and then there has been a lot of history with hydrogen. I mean, there's been buses in hydrogen, running on hydrogen in London, going back, decades. But it's definitely become a refreshed, and it's seen as a pathway to, a cleaner energy source and all the rest of it. So it's clearly very topical now. The opportunity with we I guess, taking a step back, we ended up a power generation business. It wasn't our intention when we started the business. So I guess that fluidness with what we are is open to change without a lot of. We started to feel quite exposed to the fact that we were a diesel generator company, and suddenly become quite good at it and have a lot invested in it. And as the political winds started to change, and the awareness of CO2 emissions and global warming, and what we could start seeing what was happening in Europe with some of the restrictions on not only just the engine emissions, but some of the new technologies that were coming out. Going back even 3 years ago, we had started to. Brad and myself went to Borma in Germany to try and get our heads around what's available that we could go and put in our product mix that was going to be a cleaner alternative to diesel. But even going back as close as 3 years ago, there was really nothing. I wouldn't say nothing. There was nothing that was clearly obvious to us anyway, and certainly nothing that made anywhere near economic sense. There was some battery technologies happening and some hybrid systems and so forth, but it didn't stack up anywhere near commercially viable. But hydrogen was always of interest because it's clearly got a lot of different applications within mining and construction. And so how I found EODev is literally by Googling hydrogen generators. So come across this company, and EODev's the manufacturer of our hydrogen generator, the GH2. Literally saw online a 100 kVA hydrogen fueled generator, and thought, wow, that is exactly what we want. Our range. I mean, we're really quite good at the market between 20 kVA to 200 kVA. So it was sort of right in our sweet spot. It looked like a generator. Take your point, it doesn't look like any other generator, but it still was designed for construction in the sense that it had fork points, it had lifting hooks, it had a robust canopy, so it was portable. So we wanted something that was robust, portable, that suited our customers, which is construction, mining, rental. So we'd really seen nothing else like it. So, and I don't think, there are obviously other people making hydrogen powered generators, but I don't think at this point anyone's packaged up something quite like that yet.
I don't think so.
So yeah, we probably a little bit naively, to be honest, just thought, wow, awesome, let's just go after this agency. So we approached Stefan as an international sales manager at EADev, probably to the point of harassment, I guess, in the early stages at late at night, because he's, yes, we are looking at Australia as a market, but who the hell are you? And clearly there's a lot bigger companies than us that could have taken on distribution, and some of their distributors overseas are, the big boys. So we needed to prove to them that we were capable of taking that to market. So that was a period of a few months of obviously doing a lot of work around our capabilities and all the rest of it. And so it was a little bit cart before the horse. We were so excited to get the agency in the end. We were just like, yay, we've got it, and ordered some stock and let's go. And so then we sort of thought, all right, let's look at hydrogen and how we actually sell these
How
things.
do we actually fill this thing up?
Well, first of all, yeah, exactly. How do we fill it up? All the basic stuff that everyone's asking me every day, we had no idea about that stuff, but we saw it as such a good looking product. They'd done some awesome promos overseas where they lit up the Eiffel Tower, and we just had to have it. So we got it. We ordered some stock, but they're quite expensive. So we're all in. And then we started reaching out to some hydrogen, specialists, engineers, and so forth, and then really started trying to get our heads around the packaging, the compliance, and the availability of hydrogen, and how we're going to make this thing work. We saw it operating in Europe, so surely it can operate in Australia. It's just a matter of sorting out our own supply chain with hydrogen and the compliance. Tick, tick, done. Sounds easy. Wasn't. We're very lucky that over the course of that period, the product, EADev have a shareholder, Toyota International are a shareholder, and also the unit is run by a Toyota fuel cell. So, and that was another reason that we were attracted to it. Obviously Toyota is a great brand, and they're one of the leaders in the hydrogen fuel cell industry. So they were reasons to have confidence that we were on the right track with the product. But Toyota Australia approached us and said, essentially, after a few discussions, we'd like to help you and support you. And so parallel to us waiting for our inventory, which is to be here shortly, just as a side, we've ordered the next generation model, so it's taken a little bit longer to get here. It's a little bit more compact to the unit you saw at the show. It's got the new next generation fuel cell, a little bit more power. So there were some really good reasons to just wait an extra few months. So Toyota flew in one of the units that are on our website and have been linked in as the original model. So Toyota actually flew one of those units in, and God knows what that cost them, and have taken the compliance side of things off our hands. So the Toyota Hydrogen Centre in Melbourne, led by Matt, and he's obviously got a team, Joel and Lisa, and then he has some supporting engineers, Arthur. These guys and Lisa have been instrumental in actually assisting us to get the machine market ready, and they've leveraged off their knowledge of the hydrogen industry through their Mirai car. They actually produce hydrogen at Altona, so they're across the standards. But even that has been challenging. Even from them, there are still a couple of small things that we need to sort out. More like quite small, minor details, but things that need to be addressed. So recent promotions we've had to get some special approvals to do them, because there is still a couple of compliance boxes to tick. But yeah, so and from there it's been understanding the industry, trying to understand the applications, and so we've spent like hundreds of hours, with no words of an exaggeration, talking to some engineers in that space, specialists in that area, just understanding where you get the hydrogen, the difference between green and grey, and what's it look like going forward. How do we firstly sell the units, but okay, it's all very well for us to order the first 3, but we're not doing this for it to be a promotional LinkedIn one-off. We want it to be a a product that is that can transform the market. So we now have a clear group of partners, I guess, in the hydrogen supply side of things. There's ATCO in Western Australia, really good guy. Russell runs that. And then we've got VOC gases, and there's Air Liquide, and there's Core Gas in New South Wales. We've got a network of people now that we're working on getting pricing, understanding the delivery of hydrogen to site is not just like diesel. There is more standards. It is a little bit more. Standards is the interesting point. There are no standards, but delivering hydrogen, there is standards. It's a dangerous good, so it needs to be done by obviously someone with that type of license. So it's definitely an evolution. The hydrogen industry is brand new. What a lot of people are really interested in with this product from the hydrogen industry is that it does show a very clear application for hydrogen, as opposed to it just being a source of energy for, running a mine site or pumping into the grid or something like that. It's a mobile application for it. So like a car or like a truck, it's another application, and there's not that many mobile products at the moment in the market that run on hydrogen. So talking to government, we've spoken to the West Australian government hydrogen minister, Alana McTinnon. We've spoken with New South Wales government, and I think that's what they are really excited about, is they see potential for another use for, the investment in hydrogen. So, but at the moment, the reality is at the moment, there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of new plants coming online, electrolyzer plants. Most of these plants now will be green, and that is that it's powered by renewable energy. So we're not really achieving anything if we are using hydrogen that's, that it's being powered by liquid gas or coal-fired power stations.
That's defined as grey, does it then?
There's a bunch of different colours, but essentially, I'm going to get this wrong, but basically green is 100% green. That's fact. So that needs to be powered by wind or solar, a renewable energy source, right? But there's a bunch of other colours depending on what the power is. It could be nuclear, it could be this, it could be that. But ultimately, grey, I think, is a common generalization. It might be powered by not completely green power source, basically. So yes, it still might be far less emissions than running a diesel generator. It might be 80% better or 90% better, but it's not 100% clean. So if that machine is running off green hydrogen, all that it's emitting is water. So there is no emissions. So and that's the amazing thing about it, to be honest. And that's if you consider how many thousands of diesel generators are chugging away out there, and we know because we have sold a lot of them. There's 10,000 alone in the West Australian mining market, just chugging away, running bore fields and dewatering pumps and that kind of stuff. So if we can get this technology into those types of markets, it could have real impact on the emissions, the global emissions, Australia's ambitions. Yeah.
So I was listening to a podcast and I heard two things jumped out at me. One was that Microsoft runs all their data centers on diesel generators at the moment, and they've put forward an initiative to replace all of the generators in their data centers with hydrogen generators.
Yeah.
So I think they've been doing a trial where they wanted to do like a fail test and then get the generator up and running and then sort of maintain for a period of time and then prove it out. And I think they recently just passed that test.
Okay.
So now they're investing in trying to figure out how are we actually going to get the fuel and all that sort of stuff to actually power it. And then I also saw that BHP put forward an initiative. I think it was $36 billion through to 2050 they're going to put forward to try and get hydrogen as their main source for generation power as well, which like just hearing those two things, like you can hear the direction where people are going. I think, but you need more people to come on board and sing in the same song, because there's always going to be haters. And it's like, generate diesel is the only way to go, that sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I've heard it so many times over the past 6 months while we've been pitching this. And some of our other clean energy products. I've got diesel in my blood, and it's like, okay, fair enough. But I mean, I have no, it's like with the diesel generators, obviously they're going to play a part in our business for a long time yet. The transition is not easy. It's going to take a bit of time, but yeah, I mean, those types of investments are critical. So some of the mine sites, for example, will literally build their own power source. So, and this is where, I mean, it's not just an environmental consideration. It's if you look at what's happened with COVID, with supply chain, cost of diesel going through the roof, the issues with Ukraine and the energy crisis in Europe. So, if you look at our energy security, it's actually quite a significant national issue. We import, I don't know the number, but obviously millions and millions of barrels of diesel. So being able to produce our own energy source here that ultimately is also clean makes a lot of sense. Australia has a lot of sun, a lot of space. You just need water as well, which potentially is one barrier to building a scaled electrolyzer to create the hydrogen. But yeah, it's companies like that that are investing that make it exciting, and we know of several projects that are a massive scale of companies doing similar things. So it's going to happen. The issue is we've got now probably, I mean, my story is 2 years, I think, of trying to manage that gap. Hydrogen is available now. There might be instances where we have to use grey hydrogen in certain, I guess, demonstrations or trial runs and that kind of stuff. But it's a pathway to getting where we want. Ultimately, that's to have thousands of these things out there running off green hydrogen. So that's not going to happen next week. But yeah, it definitely needs the big companies to get involved, and I think it needs some government assistance as well. We've spoken a lot with government, and there is definitely a want to help and a want to be involved. I'm just not quite sure they fully know what to do, and that's not a criticism. I think they're trying to understand, what technologies are available, what the applications are, and not just to throw money at things. There is funding available, by the way, for building these types of projects, but for a company like us that's actually just importing, and I mean, we're spending a lot of money on the engineering side and the obviously investing a lot of money into the capital. There's no real support for, I guess, someone to go out and spend a lot of money like that to bring products to market so customers can trial them and like one of the guys at the Water Corp, we did a demonstration there the other day, and they had I think about 12 of their engineers come out, and because we had some one of our battery systems there, which is from a company called Amps, which replace diesel generators for batteries to run tower cranes on construction sites. But he said, what I love about what you guys are doing is just you're bringing the stuff in and you're allowing us to touch it and feel it. And so for those guys being engineers, this stuff all needs to be trialed. It needs to be touched, felt. It needs to be put in the Pilbara where it's like on the moon with dust and heat. So you can't do that from a textbook or from overseas. We need to have the equipment here. So and that's been the awesome thing about having Toyota bring one forward. It's enabled us to touch and feel it. The reason I'm over east, we're doing customer demonstrations again next week, and that just builds the momentum. So yeah, but there is going to be a tricky period where the compliance is not completely clear. Having a national framework around that is not there yet, so there's no guidelines as such. So I guess this is where Toyota is so critical, is because they're actually assisting make those guidelines and the operating procedures for this bit of equipment and so forth. And we're contributing to that on the generator side because we understand a lot of the I guess safety considerations on the generator market generally. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's definitely not been easy, but you can see from the amount of interest and the amount of attention it gets, it's definitely feels like it's worthwhile, and it's I guess straightened us up and really given us a purpose. EODev have a product rollout plan, which is going to include. So this is the first unit, 100 kVA. That is syncable to up to, potentially 10 plus units to 1 megawatt. But they have larger containerized units coming on the horizon, which will again be a game changer for the mining industry. Getting larger units is really where the dial begins to move in terms of the volume of hydrogen you need for one, but also the CO2 and emission savings that can be made. So that's the exciting bit. And to have a partner like that back us in, they have a really aggressive is the wrong word, but dynamic team culture. And they're expanding rapidly. So they're in sort of startup mode themselves in a way. Well, they are a startup essentially. So they have that same energy and that want to learn and what are the applications, and they're looking at purchase power agreements, for example, which is something we hadn't really considered. So that might be, while the capital costs are high and the hydrogen costs are a little bit higher than where ultimately they need to be, doing purchase power agreements for customers where they only pay for the amount of energy they use. Different ways of getting these things into the market is what we're looking at now.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the cost of the generator itself is higher than typical of a diesel generator, and I think that's where, when the solution gets proven out and it starts to grow more and more companies have it, that's when the government needs to step in to have some type of fuel tax credit or something to try and help reduce that cost for those companies. Something like that I think would be very useful for the market. Yeah,
definitely. They are, I think you can get 50% funding to build the electrolyzer plant, so that brings the capital costs down. But it's just going to, definitely I'd love to see something like that bridged the gap. The cost versus diesel is getting pretty close. It's probably more the lack of availability, and also there's additional costs in the transportation and so forth at the moment, while there's the storage units aren't at a pressure that allows us to store enough energy to get enough energy to site in an efficient way. There's a few challenges like that, but as that all improves, the volume improves through EODev. I mean, they're scaling up their production massively over the next 12 months. So, they're going to be in a position to produce in the hundreds of units per year, where at the moment it's less than that. But that new facility is in play, and our units will be produced from there. So naturally, as volume improves, the price will come down. The capital cost on this unit is a lot higher than a diesel generator, so it still has a long way to go. But the customers that have taken them on now, and the trials that we're doing now, for example, Kennards have purchased 2 units there. One of our traditional diesel customers by Denyo office. They see the benefit of, with some of their more progressive customers, working in with them on some projects just to understand it, just to get it onto site, to see how it can work. And then as those cost barriers become less, they'll be in a much better position to then lead the market, I guess. Cost is not always the major consideration as well. When you talk about, tier 1 construction companies, construction companies are often under cost pressure on projects, and that is a reality, but there is government red tape sometimes on projects to have an element of that, the power or the construction use to be renewables. It might be 10%. So government's driving it, some of the pull through on that side of it. So it might be an $800 million project. So if it means another 500 grand needs to be spent on this type of technology to win the job, the number becomes quite inconsequential. So there's definitely applications at the moment where the price is not the key driver, but clearly that's not for everyone. It's only the top guys can afford to do that. So to get mass penetration, it needs to stack up economically, or it just won't happen. So not everyone is just going to spend more money to save emissions. There are other benefits to the unit, however. They're very quiet. So in Europe, Netflix have used them in a lot of their production for some of their TV shows and so forth. So I think the events industry will pay more just for they're generally very progressive type companies, so they have their own emissions targets that they want to meet, but it is a quiet unit which suits the rental industry, the events industry.
So what we're saying, I'll look at the camera and I'll say, like, so Coates and Onsite need to jump on board and follow Kennards at the moment.
Well, I'd love them to, absolutely. Clearly we want everyone. We'd love to sell them to everyone. I think there is going to be a limited number of units available this year. We've got 6 on order and 2 are sold. There's some trials committed, but there's definitely still some opportunities for other customers to get some units this year. This year, to me, is really about the promotion and getting the word out there and just letting people know that these are coming and getting some working trials done. We need to. We've got some trials lined up in Melbourne with the Toyota unit in the next month, so they'll actually be on construction sites. And the big unknown is, and this is what will probably work more with local engineers, will be customizing it for the mining market, because running in Paris is a lot different to running in the Pilbara. So the heat, how does the fuel cell respond running, at 50 degrees with red dust everywhere? So getting those types of trials done, and that's what the Water Corp in Western Australia are interested in doing some trials up at Broome. There's other miners that are interested in doing those types of trials. So we need to get the real world data, how it operates on the ground, even the consumption of the hydrogen. Whilst we have data, it's 3 to 4 kilos per hour at full load. How does the heat affect that? The cooling system runs more, and so this year's about promotion, getting it out there. Obviously, selling a few of these units would be nice. And then really setting the platform and the base for next year, where we can, go next level with it.
So a couple of things come to mind. Because you want to learn so much about it, I'm assuming you're hooking it all up with telematics, so you've got all the data coming in from the generators, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the challenges when I was in Texas, and I was talking about gas power generators, is that the gas actually is harder on the engine, which means that there's more maintenance and all sort of stuff.
Okay.
So I don't know much about hydrogen. Do you know how it affects the engine at all?
Well, these are fuel cells, so these aren't combustion engines. So there are hydrogen engines coming out, and I think probably already available, which is like a typical combustion engine running off hydrogen. I think that would probably be a consideration there, but I couldn't answer how it would affect the fuel cell. That one of the questions regarding the fuel cell is because Toyota obviously their brand is so successful for a reason, and that is they're very careful about what is said and the limitations they put on their products and all the rest of it. So understanding in the real world over time how the fuel cell runs and performs and lasts is something that is just not known, because it just the units have only been available for 18 months, 2 years. So they know how it responds in their car, in the Mirai. It's the same fuel cell that's in the car. But over time, a generator application is different loads. It could be, much different conditions. The loads could vary. So you've obviously got a different application for the fuel cell. So some of the figures that they've put on the life of the fuel cell, different things like that, are very conservative to what we're hoping will actually be in the real world. And that's for exactly the type of reason that you're talking about, I guess. But very different to a typical. The technology of a fuel cell is very different to a combustion engine. So it's
So let's talk about the maintenance side of them. So let's say I've got a mining site and I've got a bunch of diesel generators and I've got a bunch of hydrogen generators, and I know what happens with my diesel generator when it goes down. I might need to get a tech there. Might need to log in and check what's going on. Like, do you know when something goes wrong, what needs to happen then on your fuel cell then generator?
Yeah, it's something we've put a lot of thought into, particularly when you see it running. It's very simple, but at the same time, it's very complicated. So you've effectively got the power being delivered from a 45 kilowatt lithium battery. So there's 3 components to the unit. You've got the battery, then you've got the fuel cell, and then you've got the top half of the generator is effectively just a big fan for the cooling. So it's an electric fan. So by that it means it only turns on when the fuel cell reaches a certain temperature. So that's more efficient. So to watch it work is pretty amazing. There's a computer on the unit. The power is coming from the lithium battery, so there's no noise at all. So just like any other hybrid car or Tesla or whatever. Once the fuel cell goes to once the battery drops to a certain percentage of charge, that's when the fuel cell kicks in. That produces the power to then recharge the battery. Once the fuel cell gets to a certain temperature, the fan will turn on. The fan might just turn on for a burst. It might turn on for, I imagine if it's in the Pilbara, it'll be on a lot. But when we did the trials recently in Melbourne, it was hardly on at all because it's Melbourne. But to answer your question more specifically, the servicing is just filters and so forth, which pretty similar to a diesel engine. I think 1,000-hour service intervals. In terms of support, we can envisage this being, Australia's a big country, as we know. Most techs on site are pretty good with diesel. They know what to do. We can talk them through, troubleshoot any issues. We're looking into, yes, we'll be able to log in and see what's going on with the machine. But we're also trialing we've actually already started working on implementing some 3D goggles that we can attach to the side of the machine. So for 2 reasons. One, for training. So when the engineers are actually setting up the unit, we can show them through the goggles, connecting up the man packs to the generator, the pre-start process, all that kind of thing. But also, we could log in from our head office, for example, and see what the tech's seeing and talk them through, some diagnostic things.
Wow.
These are expensive bits of equipment. It's new technology. So, in the short term, most of these jobs are going to be around the metropolitan area. But as we go forward, we want, mining's the big opportunity, mining or oil and gas for that matter as well. So the big regional locations are really where this thing, off-grid applications, is where generators are used primarily.
Yeah.
So having a support system that we can do without having someone there is going to be important, and to be able to sort the customer's issue out without flying someone out to Mackay or wherever it is something we're working on.
Yeah. So talking about trials, so we were talking before the podcast that Toyota was actually powering parts of the Marvel Stadium for the AFL. So we'll talk about that experience and how that came down. Yeah, that was
awesome and terrifying at the same time. So that was actually only 1 week after Toyota had finally got the I should say at this point a provisional approval to run the unit, because there is still some compliance hurdles which will be worked through, but they just need to be worked through. So they got us involved as the distributor, obviously, to be involved with the testing of the unit. So that was a week before the Marvel event. So Toyota's a sponsor of the AFL. So their marketing team had come up with the idea to run the hydrogen generator at a AFL game, which was on a Saturday night. Pretty big game at Marvel Stadium. So the idea was that the generator would be on display. They're also displaying their Toyota Mariah car. So this is a Toyota promotion, nothing to do with Blue Diamond, but we're their deployment partner for their promotional activities for their unit. Obviously, we're working with them because we're going to be selling and distributing the unit. So we're working in together on the compliance and different ideas for applications and different potential modifications, etc., etc. So we did the trials only the week before. So on the actual event, so our role was we worked in with Joel, who's the operations manager, to handle the logistics, which was basically just getting the machine to site and set up and all that sort of stuff. So we actually store it at our Melbourne branch now. Shan is the manager of our Melbourne branch, is an electrical contractor. So everything was reasonably straightforward. However, whatever reason, the coach's box was chosen as one of the areas to power, and I can see the reason, because it was clearly going to make it more interesting and something they could talk to during the game, and rather than just powering a light switch or whatever. And it was also powering the marble sign at the front of the stadium. So there was quite a few concerns as it got closer from Western Bulldogs football team in AFL regarding the if the generator does fail. And, you know, it had only been run for the first time in Australia the week before, so it was not impossible that there was not an unforeseen event. However, I mean, the Toyota guys and their engineers were pretty all over it, so there was not really a concern that it wouldn't work, but there's always a fail-safe, right? So the initial fail-safe was just to have a manual switch that, you know, and that's in the end that wasn't sufficient. They estimated it might take 5 to 10 minutes to turn the power back on. Power goes off in the coach's box, 5 to 10 minutes, they lose all their screens, they lose the game. Potentially that might be an issue. Leading up to, within a couple of days of the event, our team actually installed an ATS on the coach's box. So we had one line running from the generator to the coach's box with a separate ATS, and then one 15 amp line just running to the marble sign on the front of the stadium. So in the end, the actual load on the generator was very low. It was like 10% load. So it did the job quite easily, and the ATS didn't have to work, which was good. We'd been there on the Thursday night before and tested it, and got to sit in the coach's box, which was really cool, and turned the generator off and tested it, and the lights come back on and all that sort of stuff. So it was all set up to work well, and it was an amazing event, and the content created from that absolutely invaluable. Got a lot of exposure, and hopefully we can work with Toyota on other events like that, because it was really, I mean, it's clearly something different that is out of our normal day-to-day thing, and we had several of our staff there. I know they're all excited to be a part of it, and it's not something you get the experience to do every day. So just being able to be involved in it was awesome, and the fact that we could assist Toyota in that way. Our strength is the electrical generator power delivery side, and obviously their strength is in the hydrogen gas side. So the combination's working quite well at the moment with getting the product into the market.
How was your stress levels on Friday?
Oh, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. So it was every time a goal was kicked, they would dim the lights at the stadium, and I just thought, oh my god, what's happened? And there was actually a waft of smoke wafting across the ground, and one of my mates texted me and said, is that smoke coming from your generator? I was like, what smoke? What are you talking about? Obviously Toyota had a lot of, I mean, we were confident everything would be fine, but of course until it all happened, and you had the Toyota engineer there, Arthur and Joel, and those guys are all over it, and we had my team there as well. So so it was never in doubt, but until you get to the end of it, but and Toyota had a lot of their senior people there, and so it wouldn't have been a nice feeling if it had failed.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting. Like, I think it's hard taking on initiatives like this, because there's a bit of risk on your part as well. Like, you're spending a lot of time and money on this new technology to bring into the business and take it at a national level. If you think back to like Tesla with Elon Musk and trying to get into that, like all the pressure that went into that. And obviously I'm not saying it's the same scale.
Yeah, sure.
But you know what I mean? Like they're, for your shareholders, like this is a risk. This is a big risk.
No, spot on. And it's not insignificant, the amount of money we've put in relative to our size and capacity. Look, if these machines don't sell and the battery units we've got ordered prove to be uneconomic, end of the day, we'll have to stop. But we're seeing enough. So yes, we're taking a significant risk, and that risk, if everything we're doing failed, it would hurt us financially significantly. But we're seeing enough to be confident that it's not going to fail. I think it's going to be hard, and I don't think, like, the biggest cost at the moment has probably been to our time, and like for Brad and myself in particular, have spent the last 12 months in a lot of meetings with engineers and so forth, where that could have been time spent with customers selling our traditional products. So if anything, it's taken our focus off our core business. We're lucky that we've got some really good guys that have kept that firing along. And Brad and myself, don't get me wrong, still have direct dealing with our customers and all the rest of it. But there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, and it's taken a lot of time. So that's probably been the biggest risk. Just that taking your eye off the ball. So we're very cognizant of the only way that we're getting able to get this technology into the market is because our core business is going strong, and our core business involves selling diesel generators. So we're not going out there and saying we're God's gift to saving the planet, because we still have to do that, but we are contributing in a way that I don't think anyone else is in our industry, and that we are investing a lot of our time and a lot of our money to try and, I guess, lead the transition, to be ahead of the curve. Yeah. So it's just something that really interested us, and so we're 10 years in, and I just kind of feel like it's the right time for us to pivot, and it's not something that we could, we're not pivoting 360. It's still our core business. It's the same customers, so it's giving us, we're being able to leverage off the work we've already done to bring this new technology to market. So yeah, the risks are that the return on investment is quite low, or they're not there at all. The risks are that some of the technology doesn't perform as well as we'd hope, and there might be some extra work that needs to be done locally to customize it. We're expecting that. That's going to be a big part of it. So yeah, it's definitely not lost on me, the risk, but I think we're even just being here with you today, being able to talk about this rather than just selling diesel generators and traditional stuff that we've done is more interesting and more exciting. So it's given us a bit of purpose and a bit of a why. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I think you need, at the start of the podcast, you were talking about when you started the business with your business partners, like no wasn't an option. Like you had to have that startup mentality to push through and grind and do whatever it takes. You sort of need that mentality with this as well. Like things are going to be hard for the next 2-3 years or whatever, 5 years, whatever it's going to be.
That's right.
And any time that things become too much, it's like, I take a step back and make sure that we understand our purpose and why we're doing this. Make sure that we understand what our customers want and they're on the same page, stuff like that. And because it's I think some people underestimate how much starting a business and doing an initiative this drags your energy.
Oh yeah.
Like it's very straining on your business and your friends and family and all that sort of stuff. So how do you manage all that stress?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's been a talking point at home at the moment because, I mean, Europe comes online at when I'm 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or whatever. So you start talking to our suppliers that are mostly overseas at that time, and so I guess my level of engagement, and I'd say the same with my brother, there was the startup of the business where it was obviously through the roof, and then it probably dropped to a point where, hey, lifestyle's good, we've got this business, it's going well, and now it's going exactly back into startup phase, but probably even higher because it's national, and the stakes are higher, and like you say, it just has to work. So there's a period now where, for example, customer trials in Melbourne, if that was just with our core business, I wouldn't have to fly to Melbourne to do that, but I feel obligated to make sure that it works and it goes well and there's no issues. So yeah, at this stage we need to be all over it. Managing stress, like everyone's got their own techniques. Mine involves going for a run, maybe having a couple of beers and a glass of wine at night, but I think it's not. There's no easy answer to that. I think having the ability to having gone through a lot of highs and lows, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's never as bad as it seems, and it's never as good as it seems. So we celebrate success, but we don't get too carried away with it as well. Try and just keep it level and sort of have a bit of that personality in myself, I guess. But don't get too excited when things are going back really well because next month might be tough. But so yeah, no easy answer to that. But I think the fact that it's been so enjoyable and rewarding, and the business is starting to get recognised, and we're able to I think get a lot of satisfaction from repositioning our business from what was probably seen as a Perth-based supplier to something more professional and something that's actually adding value to the industry is been pretty rewarding so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Justin. Well, thank you for coming on the Rental Journal podcast.
Cool. No, thanks for having me. It's been really fun. Yeah.